Let's move on to blood vessels. Alright, now three main types of blood vessels that we saw or we know of. You have got the arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay, take note of the drawing that you will have to draw in the exams themselves. Okay, so arteries, it will have a very small lumen. Okay, at the same time, the muscular wall will be incredibly big. Okay, so that is to enable for stretching and dilation, extreme recoiling of the blood vessel, the arteries themselves. Okay, it doesn't contain valves because you are just traveling through a very straight passageway. Small lumen is to enable high pressure. Imagine you have got a hose. Most of the time when we want to hose down something, we will actually press half of the gap to enable the pressure to be larger. Okay, the same concept will apply here. Now veins, they have a larger lumen, okay, for drawing. So you have to draw the lumen slightly larger. On top of that, what they have, because they are carrying deoxygenated blood against gravity, is they will have valves. Okay, so the valves, because it is traveling upwards against gravity, so you will have to prevent the backflow of blood. Okay, now another thing that actually helps the passage of blood back to the heart, let's say from the legs upwards, is quite a pretty long distance. We have these muscles. Okay, so these are, for example, the muscles at your calves. When you walk, the muscles contract. So the contraction of the muscles, okay, imagine it keeps contracting, it actually helps to move the blood back up to the heart. Okay, so which is why people, older people especially, are not advised to sit for very long periods in the plane or in the, let's say if you're overseas, those long train rides. Okay, they're encouraged to walk around or wear compression stockings, which will encourage the movement. Okay, so another thing is your compression stockings, if you happen to see application questions. Okay, so compression stockings and walking, it will help to move the muscles up, help the muscles to push the deoxygenated blood up. Okay, now capillaries are often used for the flow, your diffusion of substances. Okay, so one end of the capillary is going to be touching the, one end of the capillary is going to be touching the artery. The other end of the capillary is going to be touching the vein. Okay, so the segment that is touching the artery itself is what we call the arterial end. Okay, so just let me write it out. It's what we call the arterial end. Okay, now the other one is what we call the venous end. Okay, because it is grouping back to the vein. Alright, so over here, some of y'all did your basic arteries and all that, so I'll just briefly go through the overview of what we have. Okay, so we have got, let's say this is your heart. Okay, sorry, I can't draw very well. Okay, so this is your heart. Your heart will pump out. Okay, I'm going to choose red for oxygenated blood. Okay, so your heart will now pump out blood via the coronary arteries. Okay, so it will pump out through the coronary arteries. Okay, coronary arteries, it will then flow down to all your major arteries, which will get smaller into the arterioles. Okay, the arterioles will now enter into the capillary. Okay, so this red color one is the arterial end of my capillaries. Okay, so when diffusion of your toxic substances back into the capillaries or food substances to cells have been completed, it will then recollect back at the venous end. Okay, so from here it will then merge all into your venules. Okay, venules will then go back into veins, larger ones. Veins will then enter back to the heart via what we call the vena cava. Okay, we will see the vena cava again when we look at the heart itself. It will go back to heart, and the whole process will repeat by itself. Alright, now the main ones that you will have to draw are just these ones that you have to draw. You have to know how to draw arteries, you have to know how to draw capillaries and your veins, okay, which is what is illustrated here. Now for veins, it's just one big thing, okay, it's one cell thick, so you will have to draw it by including all this way, and it's one cell, so one nucleus in each location. Alright, okay, now move on to the next part, your tissue, fluid and lymph. Okay, so remember, recall earlier on we talked about this segment here. You have got your arterial end, right? Okay, so you have got this part here, which is your arterial end here. Okay, so the same thing here, arterial end is present. Okay, so when we look at blood pressure, you would expect, because capillaries are extremely small, to have a lower blood pressure, but that is not true. Okay, because when we compare the number of capillaries to the number of veins, okay, including the type of pressure that it is exposed to. So for capillaries themselves, they are exposed to both the venous and the arterial end. So overall, the pressure of my capillaries is still higher than arterioles and veins. Okay, so why arterial end, it has the high pressure, it will then force the substances such as your food substances, your oxygen, etc. into my cells that are surrounding it. Okay, so it will then be able to enter these cells. Okay, so once it has entered the cells, okay, whatever that is not required will now exit over back into the capillaries via the venous end of it. Okay, so you have got venous end over here. Here is your venous end. Okay, so take note some of the things that are unable to pass through. Your plasma protein is unable to pass through because it is simply too big. Okay, white blood cells, they can still pass through to fight infections or opportunistic bacteria over at the cellular level at the cells by changing the shapes themselves. Okay, now this is the illustration that we have. Okay, so for blood vessels here, so arterial end over here at one section, venous end at the other side. Okay, so you can see that the white blood cell is changing shape as it passes through the areas. Okay, and you have got oxygen, which is also allowing to enter into the cells for respiration to take place. Okay, again, respiration will be gone through later, so you don't have to worry about that yet. Alright, okay, now that's the end of this part. Okay, what I would like you all to do is you can turn to your worksheets again. So for this time round, complete the following questions for your worksheet. Okay, only 2 questions, questions 13 and question 16. Okay.